All right, so once again, good day, everyone. And this is our 15th class, NodeJS Intermediate class. And you're welcome to another session. My name still remains Benjamin if you need to. And this class is brought to you by KodeCamp. At KodeCamp, we're looking at building the skill economy. So going through this process, expected that if you need to go through all successive classes, you should be able to, at the end of this program, work as a developer of an intermediate capacity. So here we have a rich curriculum, and we have practical coding experiences and assignments and things that is going to make you very versatile. So if you haven't been part of this segment, if not gone through our past 14 classes, please go over them. There's a lot of things, a lot of things that have been taught there, and this is available on the KodeCamp channel on YouTube. So for those who are just seeing just one of these, go ahead and you see so much more. So today we're going to be looking at authentication and authorization, and this is a continuation of the previous class we had, a previous series. So what we'll be doing here is we'll be looking at access and refresh tokens. So once again, let me just introduce my partner here on this program. So we have here a mentor, Prosper Ararike, and he's a backend developer on NodeJS, MongoDB, Express.js, and TypeScript. It's available on the KodeCamp workspace at prosper.js, and you can also reach me out at Aerosoft. Okay, so let's get straight into the business of today. We have pretty much a lot to cover, and I think that's why I'm rushing for time. So today we'll be looking at access. Okay, we'll look at access and fresh tokens. So before we go into that, let's have a brief overview. Let's have a brief overview of what we've learned so far. So I think you can close this now. But let's just have a brief overview of what we've learned so far. And we've been working with an inventory API. Okay, so we have an inventory app API, and we are using this for the basis of what we've done. So I'll just go over what we have. So basically, we have a route just to show that the app exists or it's live or it's working. And then we have two routes here. So two of them, one for items and for users. And I think I've included course. Okay, I've included course. I wanted to tag along the front-end application just so we can see how it is. For there hasn't been much time in my schedule to be able to do that for this purpose of this class. So I just really tagged along the course. That's the only thing or difference that has been made to this page. Then let's see what we have. Okay, so in the API folder, we have two controllers. We have that for the user and for the item. We have middleware for authentication purposes, authorization rather. We have models for the item, okay, and the user. And then we have two routes, and then this route for user and item. Then we also have validations. So here in the validations, we have validations for user, and I introduced the complexity options. Okay, so I introduced complexity options as a means of being able to simplify. Being able to simplify your you want to find out from the user. Okay, maybe a password, and you want the user to have, maybe, for example, a minimum character length of 8, a maximum of this. The password needs to have one lowercase, at least one uppercase, one numeric symbol, and all that. So when you look at all these things, it just means that this is going to be helping to make sure you have a strong password. And ordinarily, another approach to this would have been by using regex, but since we already have joy validation, which easily helps us check for these other things, then we just throw this along here. Let's use this. So what this does is we're using a package called joy password complexity, and it returns a joy object. So this joy object that it returns is what is going to be used here for the joy's validation purposes. So it has a cleaner syntax, which is very easy. And instead of you having to write a whole bunch of code just for you to take the password strength, you just create this as some options, and you can reuse this. So here you can reuse this for user validation, and by the time we move over to maybe having another endpoint for updating or changing the user password, instead of us going to using the same regex, just pick just this again, and it's reusable. So that makes life pretty much easy and good to go. Some other things we did is we looked at the login. Okay, so when looking for the login for a user, after the user login has been validated, that's the first body has been validated. Then we find the user using the email that is given. And one of the things we saw that we needed to do in previous classes is we needed to remove the password. So in the password schema for the user, rather, in the password schema, in the schema for the user, where the user has the password, we included a select false. Okay, so this select false, what it does is whenever you require the user from the database, this field will be omitted. Okay, so this field will be intentionally left out, so you don't return it. So if you have a get route, for example, you want to get the user, you don't need to return the password. You don't need to return because password is something sensitive. It's only somebody who goes into the database, or for certain routes where you want it, then you then use the select plus, which was then set the select to be true. So you want to then find this user and include the password field into it. So we have this here as an additional selection here before you can then use before you can then validate the user's password using bcrypt. So we talked a lot about hash in 2 periods of classes. So a hash password, we talked about that in 2 periods of classes. If you are not up to date, please go back to that. Then we started by looking at how to sign tokens. Okay, so how to sign tokens. So we basically explained the basis of JWTs, okay, JWTs, and from there we're able to look at how we could use JWTs as a means of sending in information. So generally, I just want to correct a misconception that we had, but during the course of this class, I will correct that misconception about JWTs. Okay? It doesn't quite work like how you use public keys for white classes for when we are working on this. I'm going to try to correct that misconception so we get the understanding of what this sign is really doing. Okay, so this is basically signing the payload, and you will see what we wanted to say. But I think I also made it clear in that class that whatever it is you send as a token, the information is readily available, but there are some other things that will be added using the user JWT secret as an addition. So we did that, and we were sending the token in the cookies. So we were sending the token in the cookies, and I did mention that was a bad practice. That was just for us to quickly wrap our head around how things are done. Okay, but that's a bad practice. And going to today, in today's class, we're supposed to cover sessions. We're supposed to cover using sessions in the previous class, but we couldn't quite hold the class based on certain challenges we had. And I think the core thing that you need to know and use in today's word applications for authentication purposes. And most times you have JWTs and you're using access and refresh tokens. So I'm going to focus a whole lot more on using access and refresh tokens for the purpose of this intermediate level. And then later on, you could go over into looking at using sessions. What are the benefits of using sessions? So each and every one of these different means have their own trade-off. Okay, they have their own trade-off. How things work. Okay, so when the user logs in, this is sent as the cookie, and when you log out, clears the cookie. So this is basically the cookie. So the cookie is sent to the browser, and it's stored automatically in the browser. So the front end doesn't need to pick it up. That's one of the uses of using cookies. And every time a request is coming from the front end, it automatically adds the cookies. That's if the front end does the setup very well. Okay, so normally if you are using Axios, you have in the front end, you have a with credentials field that you need to add, you need to set to true if you are using Axios, and if you are using Fetch, you use credentials or something like that. Okay, so there are certain things that front-end also needs to do, but not much. Okay, so generally, using cookies makes it very easy. Front-end doesn't have to do much work in picking the tokens and everything. But however, aside that, there are some things that the front-end will be exposed to. So I'm going to start first of all by talking about this authorize, what we did here, and then I'll show you the major challenge we have in working with front end, working with cookies. So here we have here a middleware, and the purpose of this middleware is after you have stored the cookie, in the front end when a user has been authenticated, you want to, for certain routes, not all routes, but for certain routes, you want to pick the cookie that has been stored and first of all validate the cookie. So if you've validated the cookie and the cookie does exist, then fine. But if it doesn't exist, then it's denied. So the person cannot have access to that route. So that's what we want to do here with this middleware. And then if the cookie has been validated, it hasn't been tampered with, then that's why we have the verify process. Okay, so we don't just pick the cookie. We first check if it has not been tampered with, and if not so, then we go straight to assign the requested user to this. So we want to pick the information. So basically, what we did here is we passed in some information here in the cookie, which is here the ID, and you can pass in so many things. You can pass in the user role and other things you want. But here we just passed in the ID. So we want to pick the ID that we have passed in here in this place, and then call next so that you can then use the next part. So that's what we did there. So we have a controller, and from there we also have the way we used it. So here in this route, we have the sign up, login, and log out. If you are to throw in the authorized, if you are to throw in the authorized middleware anywhere here, it will mean that if somebody is not signed in, the person cannot sign up. If somebody is not signed in, the person cannot log in or log out. So it doesn't work, or it doesn't make any sense here. So this is not where we use it. We used it in the no validations. So we used it here in the items route, and here, for instance, if you want to create an item, you say only a user who has been logged in can create an item. And there are many reasons to why you can do this. For one reason, you want to store in the user, maybe like, for example, let's look at how we modified the item model. So modify the item model, saying that you want to store in the user information as part of a new item you create. So here it's going to store in the user's object ID. That's the ID of the user. It's going to store it as part of the user item. So that way, if you want to check for items that the user created, it's easy to tag along the user ID in searching as a parameter. So that was the purpose for, that's one of those reasons why you want to use that. Then you might also want to choose to get what the user has created. So you want to get the items. So while you can have a route that gets all items exclusively to all, or rather, not exclusive, available to all people, you might decide to get all items that a particular user created. And at that point, you no longer would use this. You probably would use, you probably would use the authorize because you want to access the user's ID from the request parameter. And then if you want it to be all items whatsoever, you do not use authorize. Okay, so this is just so that you can provide the user ID to the controller when using it. So if you look at this route, we have create item. I'm going to show you here. So we have create item. So in creating items, let's see, in creating items, while on one hand, we have the request body that contains all of this other information as the name of the item, description, and all that, we can also access but right now in the request user.id, which we have changed from that middleware, we can then access this here. We can then access this user ID from that. So it is still here now, it's coming as part of the request. So what we have done is in this route, we have used this middleware to chain some additional information to the request that is going to this function, okay? So we have used this middleware as a means of chaining some information, additional information to this. And apart from it preventing people from accessing a route, you can also use it in chaining additional information that you only will get from a signed in user. So if you have other things like maybe only a user who is signed in can get information about himself, maybe in the user route. So for example, you want to see a user dashboard. So you want to get all the information that are available concerning the user. You can do that using the signed in information. You want to maybe change a user password. So first of all, you need to get the user using the ID. So all of that, are things that you can then add as maybe like a new set of routes with the middleware available. But for these three, if you were to put this middleware here, it will prevent the whole process. You can't sign in, log in, and log out. You can log out quite a while, but you can't sign in or log in with that. So that's just a brief overview of what we've done in previous classes. So we're going to start today by looking into the loophole that comes with working with cookies. Okay, working with cookies. So let's start first of all by looking at, let's first of all test this endpoint. Okay, so let's test this endpoint to see everything is working. So I'm going to just do npm run dev to see that everything is working. And I also would want to make available an additional, page so that we can see, okay, so that we can see what we would have in the cookies, okay. All right, so this is available, this is loaded, and here we have a get route to localhost for 5,000 /, and when we use this, it renders inventory app. So I want to just quickly reach out to that and just do local host for 5,000 and just /. Okay, so this should render. So this renders inventory app. Okay, so this renders inventory app, and I want to believe that this is showing, this is available to everyone. Okay, Prosper, could you let me confirm that the browser is showing, please? Okay.
Yeah,
right.
it is.
Okay. All right. Great. So I want to start by showing the limitations, okay, or the challenge with using cookies. So let's say, for instance, I want to just send a cookie. I don't need to do a token now. So I want to send a cookie. So the cookie takes basically a string which will serve as the name of the cookie and a value which could be a string. Okay, so the value should be a string. And you have options. So you have a string and a value to a string. So if it's not a string, I want to do some JSON or stringify to convert that to a string. So let's send a cookie. What do we call this? Okay, let me just call this. Token. Okay, let me just call it token, and let me attach the name to it. So what name could I just say? Okay, let me just say example. Okay, so let me just say example. All right, so this cookie is going to be available. Okay, it's going to be available by default once I go to that route. So if I was to do it on Postman, you see it on Postman, but I want to do it in the browser. So here, first of all, I haven't reloaded the page, okay? I haven't reloaded the page, page stays the same. So if I go to applications here and I go to cookie for 4,000, this is showing the previous. So if I do this currently, if I was to reload this page, it's going to tag along. As we can see here, let me increase this. As you can see here, we have the cookie that we just had there. The cookie is here and it's available. So if I was to change the name, let me just change the cookie to something else. Okay, let me say JWT. It's not really JWT. So let me just say cookie example. Let me just say cookie. All right, so cookie and example again. So here, so let me refresh and refresh the page. As you can see, we have cookie, we have example. So I just did this to show you that this is actually coming from there. Now, when you use cookies, one of the challenges with using cookies is that if your cookie is um, available on the front end, there are chances that just by the best setup we did last week, you would have that your front end JavaScript can reach out to the cookie. So I want to just do a document dot cookie, or let me see dot cookie. And if you see this, you see here that I have the two cookies available. All right, so document of cookies, I have the two cookies available. And if I want to split, let me just do a dot split to get them separately. Okay, so let me just do a dot split to get them separately. So, I didn't even choose anyone. All right, let me just do this again. Let me just do this again. Let me just do this again. I didn't choose any particular one. Or let's see, dot split. Okay, I didn't choose any particular one. So let me just do this. Wait, yeah. Okay, so here I have I have here the two cookies that came in here. So imagine now that you're storing a user's information in cookies. It makes it vulnerable to attacks. So you have different types of attacks that could happen on the front end or on your application because you are exposing the cookies. So we have some examples like a cross-site request forgery attack. And let me just put that in the chat. Okay, so just you can check it out. Okay, cross-site request forgery attacks. Basically, what they do here is, the website cannot distinguish particularly when an information is coming from your backend service or when it's coming from your actual backend service. The website cannot quite tell where it's coming from. What it just knows is receiving that. So that's why you have things like CORS to be able to define the particular site you want to receive information from. That's one. Then two, it's also going to be, it's also, apart from, the cross-site request forgery, another thing is when you send the cookies on the front end, you send the cookies to the front end, you store it as cookies now, for example. Apart from it, being able to get the information here, in cases where you then have that you're getting the information, the site might just decide that, okay, instead of me deciding to pick the information, I cannot use it anywhere else because I don't have your JWT secret. So, since I don't have your JWT secret, I'm going to pick the information and use it in the same site. So maybe this time around, I want to add in some additional information, maybe like I want to swap the account you want to send information to, send it from this account to that account, so all these things. So those attacks are attacks are things that you want. So then another thing is you have maybe like section fixation, like maybe instead of instead of like the user, a hacker or an attacker can take over that section and gain access. So when the section is available, the attacker can gain access to it. So there are several different things or different challenges with using cookies on the front end. And it's not as though cookies are bad, but one of the things you want to do is you want to add maybe like an additional modification to the cookies where the options will come in. So some other options we'll have is we have options like let's say HTTP only. So this HTTP only, we can set this to true. So what this HTTP only does is it says that it's only an HTTP request. It shouldn't be available to front-end JavaScript. So here we have front-end JavaScript. Like you saw here, I did it on the browser and it was available. Okay, so here, let me show you. Let me go back to the application. So here we can see we have two cookies here and token here. So here I'm going to go over. And add one more. I'm going to go over and add one more cookie. So let me just call this one HTTP. Let me just call this one HTTP only, just so that you'll be able to see the name. And I'll just leave that as an example. So I'm going to, once it refreshes, I'm just going to go over that same page. All right, so let's go over the same page and let me try to refresh. So refresh. I have HTTP only as it's here. And if you look here in this tab, I have here in this tab, this is HTTP only. So this tab here is an HTTP only option. So I've included this option here. We have secure, we have save sites, and some other things I can't see here, but we have other options that are here. Let me just reduce the size so that we can see. All right, so we have HTTP only, we have secure, we have same site, and same some other thing, partition, and all that. So here, this makes, so this ticks it here for this HTTP only last added. And if I was to go back to this same place to say, hey, I want to get all the cookies that are available on this site, document.cookie, then as you can see, it's only the cookies that were not with HTTP only that are accessible. Okay, there's only the cookies with HTTP only, without the HTTP only that are accessible. The third word, as you can see, is still there. All right, this is still there. So let me add another one so you just see, you get a hang of the picture. So let me just call this one yet another. So let me just say, let me just call this one another HTTP only. Okay, so I'll just call this one another HTTP only. Once this refreshes, all right, so once this refreshes, yeah, so let me refresh this page. As you can see, these two have this tick, and here, going over to console.log document dot, oh God, stressful document dot, I think I'll just copy this out, okay, so that I don't have to do this multiple times. Okay, let me just do this here. All right, so as you can see, only these two that have no HTTP option set to false. Okay, so by default, the HTTP option is set to false, and you need to set it to true. And the reason why I'm going through the stress of explaining this is because we are still going to use cookies, because cookies are still going to be used for the purpose of refresh tokens. So on one hand, when you put the options of HTTP only set to true, it gives an extra layer of security. So the front-end application cannot use it. The front-end application cannot pick it up. The only thing they can do is say with credentials, or credentials should be true. So in other words, whenever I'm sending this request on the front end, add whatever cookies are available on this front end, add whatever cookies are available to the request. But I cannot do anything with it. I cannot modify it. I cannot tamper with it. I cannot even choose to do anything with it. So that singular function of adding this HTTP only to true gives an extra layer of security. Okay, so I think that very much explains one of the things, or one of the ways that you want to try to minimize cookie capturing, cross-cookie tossing attack, cross-site scripting, and all that and everything. So there are different ways. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to share with you just the link. Okay, I'll just share with you the link that you can use to get some additional information. Okay, so you can get some additional information about cookies. Okay, so from here, just get some additional information. So this will help you out. Okay, so or if you are joining from YouTube, you can just search cookie security issues, and you will see a lot of different information that I can explain that to you. So let's go into what we want to do today. So today, what we're going to do today is we're going to modify our application to be able to access, to be able to do some form of creating access tokens. So when a user logs in, we don't want the user to log in. How do I put this now? We don't want to send cookies as the means. What we want to send is which the front end will have to manually grab and send. And the access token, since we are sending it, we're going to set like a short time span to it. So access tokens, we have a short time span. And then if we send access token and it expires, for example, it expires within 5 minutes or 15 minutes, which are ideal standard time, anything between 5 to 15 minutes, then with every new request that the front end wants to make, the front end will have to send that request with a token to authenticate it, to say that, yes, this is coming from us. And when it comes from them, there's a chance that it could expire. So the front end also has its own additional logic and Axios to check if the token has expired. If the token has expired, it will request for a new token. So it's going to request for a new token if the user has a refresh token that is still active, that hasn't expired. So I'm going to explain the logic when we get further into it, but for now, let's look at what we have on the login. Okay, so we'll look at what we have on the login, and from there, we'll look at how we can modify it. Okay, so here on the login, what we have here is to validate the user information from the request body before reaching out to the database. After we've done that, we then want to pick in the email and the password from the request body. After picking in the email and the password from the request body, we want to find the user based on the email from the database. After we find the user, we want to populate or rather add this additional field, which is the select now to put in the user password. So the user password now is returned. So we then have a user that contains all the information needed to sign in. So here we are checking if there's no user with such information, then we should give a 404. Give a 4. Let's give it a bad request. That's a bad request. Let's give it as 400. It's a bad request. Or we could just give it a 401. Okay, let's give it a 401, saying that the user is unauthorized. Okay. So unauthorized. So we can send a 401 saying that the user is unauthorized and you just want to give this additional information. Naturally or ideally, you just send the status, but now you want to add additional information to the front end just so that if you also have an intermediate front end developer, you can give them some additional information in the response to help them out. Then here you have compare password. So after you found the user and user does exist, you want to compare the password, which is the password that the user is bringing in. So you want it to be hashed, and then when it's hashed, you compare it with the hash password in the database. And from there, if it is valid, if it's not valid, then back to the same thing. And you're using invalid credentials because you don't want the user to know, or somebody, if it's an attacker, to know which one is the case. Is the email that is wrong or is it the password? You don't want them to know. Okay, so after this, what we went ahead to do is that we issued a token and we sent this token as cookies. So what we want to do differently today is that we don't want to send these tokens immediately as cookies. What we want to do is, mind you, we could have just done this, and in this place where we're sending the cookies, just add the HTTP only option here, like we saw there, and it will still work. But that's not common practice today. Okay, so I'm just trying to teach you an updated common practice, what you would likely see on a live job. That's what I want to teach you. So let's look at what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is, let's say we are going to issue access tokens. Okay, so we're going to issue an access token for a start. So we're going to issue an access token. So we're going to issue access token, and we're going to. So let me just put this as to use. Okay, so let me just put this as to do so that it's bright red to do. Okay, so I'm going to also issue a refresh token. Okay, then after issuing the refresh token, you want to store this refresh token in your database. Okay, so store refresh token in database with the user in database. Okay. Okay, so as a field, token as a field. Okay, so let me just say as a field in the user documents. Okay, in the user documents in the database. Okay, So we want to store this, and the purpose of this is how you are going to persist the information. Now, when persisting information, talking about the front end, usually used to persist information in using things like how do you describe that? Things like local storage. Now, when you use local storage, just the same way I was able to fetch the cookies, that's the same way you can also use front-end JavaScript to fetch whatever is stored in the local storage. So that also exposes it to the same similar ways of forgery and stuff as you mentioned. So what we want to do now is we're storing it as a cookie. And instead of persisting the information on the front end will trust the backend to persist the user information. So the front end is going to keep sending access tokens. And then if the access token has expired, the front end will now send the refresh token instead and say, I'm sending this refresh token. If this refresh token is valid, give me an access token. Okay, so give me an access token. So while it's still valid, always give me an access token. So that's the thing. So we get to see the logic a lot better as we go on. So what else do we want to do? Okay, let's start with that for now, and then I'm going to explain as we go on. So let's issue access token. So this to issue access token, I want to have secrets. Okay, so I want to have some secrets. So instead of me using JWT secrets, let me call this access token secret. Access token secrets, and let me duplicate this, and I'll call this refresh token secrets. Refresh token secrets, and they shouldn't be the same. All right, they shouldn't be the same. So right now I don't have time, so let me just swap this for now. Okay, they shouldn't be the same. I would probably towards the end of this class, I'll just show you a trick, easy way for you to get that using the crypto method that comes with NodeJS. So right now, I just want to go straight to the work, and then I can show you that by the time we have things set up and working. So here, I want to do access token. Let me call it access token. And I want it to be signed. So I'm going to do JWT. Remember, we still have our JWT imported. Okay, we still have our JWT JSON Web Token imported. So I want to sign this, and I'm going to take in the payload. So we have the payload, it could be a string on an object, and then your secret key as the next options, and then you have other JWT secrets, JWT options, which we may use some today. So for payload, I want to start by saying, let's have the object. So I want the ID to be the user, the underscore ID, right? User, that's the user that we find, user the underscore ID as the first parameter. Then I want to call the secret here. So I'm going to say process.end dot the secret name that I have here. So let me just copy this out. This for access token. So, right. So here, the access token. And I want to give it an expiry time. So the previous one we did is we didn't have an expiry time, and that was just for like starters. We're just trying to introduce the concept. So you want to include an expiry time. So if you check npm.js, okay, let's go npm.js. So if you go to npm.js and you check the JSON Web Token, okay, close this. JSON Web Token, you will see these different methods that I'm talking about. You see them there in practice. So here, you see the options. So here you have other options, audience, JWT ID, timestamp, key header, all this. You also have things that you can add like expired. You can choose the algorithm that you want to use to sign it. So by default, we're using the SHA-256 by default, but you could also use other algorithms depending on what you choose. Then here also you can add things like when it's issued, or things that come with it, other things. So, what I'm looking for is when it expires. Okay, for when it expires. Uh, just for the purpose of using here. Okay, issuer. Getting tired of checking here. Okay, all right. You have an expires at object. Okay, you have an expires at object. I'm not seeing it here, but okay, I'm not seeing it here, but let me just put this here. You see it there. So this here, as you can see here, it's expired, and it says expires in seconds or a string describing a time span. So here we have 60, which is seconds. You have 2 days, you have 10H, you have 7 days. So you can use 2D or 2 days. You can use 10H for hours. You can use 7D for 7 days. So that's that. So here, let me just include this. So I want this to be, and it should be a string, because I want this to expire in 15 minutes. 15 minutes, are we going to see? Let's start with 30 seconds, okay? Let's start with 30 seconds so we can see it expire. So we start with 30 seconds so we can see this expire. So we have our access token. And the process for the first token is pretty much similar. So we've done this now. So just do this. So here, this would be my refresh token. And all right, so this will be my refresh token. And the difference is that I want to use the refresh token secret instead. So I want to use the refresh token secret instead. And for this, I want this to expire in a day. So ideally, okay, so the ideal timeline is between 5 minutes to 15 minutes. Okay, so let me just put this here for you. The ideal time is 5 to 15 minutes. So if you have a product, something that's going on production now, it's no longer in development. You want to set it to 15 minutes. Okay, you want to set it to 15 minutes. All right. So here we have refresh token. So aside the refresh token, Mandy, thanks. Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about using crypto. So that's what I was going to talk about. But I'm at a rush. Okay, I'm in a rush. So probably later, once we need to cover what's important, then I will mention it to the general house. Thank you very much. All right. Okay. So all right. So going forward, when we have this refresh token, what we want to do is this refresh token that is here, we want to save or store it in this user. Okay, so we want to save it or store it in the user. So for us to do that, we need to then include that option or that parameter here. So I'm just going to add like a refresh token. Let me refresh token here. And the type should be of string. The type should be of string. And options. The type should be of string. And the default, okay, so it's not going to, I don't want it to be required. So the default should be an empty string, okay? So the default should be an empty string. So it shouldn't be required. It should be something that is not, like when you're creating a user, you don't need to define it from the start, okay? You don't need to define it from the start. So that's why I'm using the default of an empty string. And additionally, I don't want it to show up, okay? I don't want it to show up. So I'm going to put select to false. So whenever you are getting the information, just as the password shouldn't be available, I don't want the refresh token to show up in the user information, just so that the refresh token is not easily accessible to people who try to use the API or whatever. Okay, it's only for specific use that I'm going to call that. So here, for me to do this, it means that when I get the user, I want to add the refresh token. Since I'm putting the select to false here, okay, for me to get the, how do I put it? for now, I don't need to do this, okay? I don't need to do this for now per se. Okay, I don't need to do this for now per se. This is for login, right? This is for login. Okay. We'll check it out. Okay, so let me just say user dot refresh token. User dot refresh token is equals to refresh token, and if it doesn't, if it has an issue, just come back and add this. So this refresh token that is here, I'm picking this up and I want to save it. Okay, so I'm going to save the user. So I want to await the saving the user. Okay, so I'm not returning any information back, so I don't need that. So this is just to store the user information, okay, to store the refresh token user information. So on signing in or logging in, you issue the access token, issue the refresh token, save the refresh token, which will expire in, let's say, a day, in a day to 7 days. And from there, you want to now send a response. Okay, so we're going to send the refresh token. Okay, so we're going to send the refresh token with current user, with the current user, the payload, okay, in the database. Sorry, I want to send it as a cookie rather. I want to send the refresh token as a cookie in cookies with as HTTP only, as HTTP only cookie. Let me just say as HTTP. Let me just say as HTTP only cookies. HTTP only. So I want to do rest of cookie. So send the cookie, and let's just call it JWT as before. JWT. What we want to send the refresh token, and now the options we want to specify. So there are options we need to specify. So one of such is we want to specify HTTP only to be true. Why is this not giving me the option? HTTP only. It's supposed to give me the option, okay? For HTTP only should be true. All right, that's one. All right, let me save this. Then some other things you want to include, you can the max age. How long do you want this cookie to be alive on the system? Okay, so let me just break this down so that right. So you want to do a max age. Why is my system not giving me? Why is it not giving me these options? All right. So max age. Now the max age is measured in milliseconds. Okay. So if I want it to be milliseconds, the max age, as I said, max age is measured in milliseconds. Okay. And this is converted to expires at. So what it does, if you use expires at, you have to use the date of now plus the expires at the time you want it to expire. Okay, but the max age is then automatically converted and does the additions like crazy max age. So let's say if we want it to be a day, that's a day that's going to be live on the front end. We say 24, which is 24 hours, 60 minutes, and 60 seconds, and 1,000 milliseconds. This is going to be a day. And I want to add some other thing like same site. So on the front end, when you're working with front end application, you then realize that you need to include same site, none, letting it know that this token is not being issued by this particular site, it's issued by a different site, because in most cases, whoever is reaching out to your backend API is reaching to a different application. So it's not the same site. You're not having your front end and backend hosted at the same site. So that's the reason why you want to say same site, none, and then you want to set secure to true. Okay, so you want to set secure to true. So the purpose of secure, not having much information from here, but the purpose of secure is just for you to add an extra layer of security. So an SSL, one extra layer of security. All right, so you check these things up for more information. Okay, I don't want to go into so much of the details now, so I don't, say something wrong. I didn't prepare that up. So just check some of these things up. So the HTTP only, I've showed you how it works. Same site, because you're reaching out to a different application. Secure because HTTP, HTTPS should be a secured connection. The max age is once the cookie to only be valid for 1 day. So after that, the cookie ceases to be valid and probably should be cleared off. Okay, so this is one. Want to send. And if you notice, I'm not using a return statement. So this shouldn't be the end. Okay. I'm not using a return statement here. If I use a return statement, it will only send the cookie, but it won't send a response. So I want to send a response here. I could decide to use a return or I could decide to just say rest. Let me just use a return just for purpose of it terminating. So I want to now send the front end status. So I want to send a rest of status 200. Now, I want to let you know that if you don't include this status, if you just do rest.json, okay, if you just rest.json, for example, if you always send a status 200, that's the reason why we usually specify status 400. So by default, status is usually 200, but most times when I'm explaining or teaching, I just want to use this so it's clear to people or, it's clear to people who like trying to understand what's going on. I'm actually sending a status 200, and when I'm creating something, the status 201. That's just the purpose. So if you omit this, if you were to omit this here, for instance, it's going to take this as a status 200. Okay, so that's just the purpose. So here, let's go on. So here, as usual, we have our success true, right? We have a success true. We have the message. Let me just put this here. We have a message and then the token. So ideally, you could just send them the token, but right now, let's just make life easy for the front end. Wherever it's going to use this application for front end. So here, message. What do we want to say? Login successful. Okay, so message. Login successful. Then we want to send the access token. So we can then send the access token. So I'm sending the access token here. And if I don't say access is equal to access token, it will automatically still take it as an object. So if you say access token, so I can just do this like this, it's going to do that. Right. So I think we're pretty much done here. So this is for the login routes. So let's try this before we tag along something. So let's try this before we tag along something. So what do we do here? Where are we? So this is to log in, right? This is to log in. This is to log out. We're going to have to modify this. Okay, we're going to have to modify this so you can log out properly. For now, it's not logging out properly. Okay, so we're going to have to modify this. Basically, we called the token JWT. The cookie restored, we call it JWT, right? Cookie restored, we call it JWT. So let's just do this now. So just clear this. So just clear the cookie JWT. And all you're doing is you're just trying to use this to log out the cookie, to clear the cookie from the front end. However, when you clear the cookie from the front end, the user may still be signed in because the access token may not have expired. So while the access token may not have expired, the user may still have signed in. So the front end will then need to do something. So the front end then needs to do something. So if the front end is taking, for example, the access token, and the front end wants to clear the access token from what it wants to do, okay, from its responses. Okay, so when the front end does log out, the front end also wants to delete the access token or invalidate it. So that way, and then apart from that, we also send maybe the user back to a login page and then set up maybe some use navigation, use location to store in the current location that the user was before the user was logged out, and then when the user logs in, send the person back to that same place. So those are some front-end concepts in case you are a full stack developer in the making. Those are some front-end concepts that you can use to implement that. Okay, so let's test this route. Localhost 5000, login should be login /login, and the basic route is API/users. Okay, so, all right. All right, so that should be post requests. Local host 5,000, 5,000, /API/user. Is it user plural or user singular? Users, okay, users plural. Okay, users the /login. And I just want to be sure that okay, validations are still up. Yes, validations are still up. So I have here the body, raw, JSON, and so let's put in the email. And the email, what name do we have in the database? Let me check what name we had in the database. I think we had johndoe@gmail.com. We had johndoe@gmail.com. And for password, we should have, if I remember the password rightly, if I don't know how to create a new user, okay, one and okay, all right, let's see this. Log in. Invalid credentials. What we have used then? I just create a new user. Let's just create a new user. I don't have time for this. So let's just create a new user. I'd like to use this password. Let's create a new user. Each create a user post routes. What we need first thing is required. First name in all caps. Let's just go with John. Last name. Okay. So I'm just doing this because I have all the son names. I just want to be sure what I call with John. So let me delete the current of John that is there, so I don't have an issue logging in. So you can see the advantage of hashing the password. So there's no way for me to try to figure out what the password is except by trials. Okay, except by trials. Let me just delete this current user. This current John Joe. Okay, so what else do I need? Last name, email. Okay, so email just to John Joe. Email just to John Joe. John Joe @gmail.com. Oh, okay, password. Yeah, what's going on? Right, password. So let me just copy this. Good. All right, so password strong enough. All right, confirm password is required. So, let's say confirm password is required. All right. Right, so as we can see, we have here the names, the first name, last name, email, and what else? First name, last name, email, first token, ID, created as such. All right, so we have that together. Right, so we have that together, and password is not available. Password is not available. All right, so let's sign in, and so let's sign in. So let's see. Yeah, so here as we sign in, we are given the access token, and the access token login successful, we're given the access token, and let us see what we have in this. So here we are given, let me see. Let me see. So I have cookies here. That wasn't working. okay, so I'm giving cookies. So this is the cookie here. So I've given the cookies. So this is the cookie here that has come in, and we're given the path. We're given that the cookie is secure, the path / and it's HTTP only, and this is when it expires. So it expires. Today is Tuesday, so it expires on Wednesday. That's the cookie that we are giving here, and come on, let's go. So we are given the cookie, and so what route can we do that? Okay, we haven't set it up to get the route. So yes, before we go further, I want to correct something. Here. So let me just go over to jwt.io or jwt.io. So here in jwt.io, I'm going to just drop in this, and if I drop this in, as we can see here, we have here the ID is given, okay? The ID is given, which is ID for that user. So if I go back to here, here you see the user ID 7D, okay? It ends with 47D. And here you see it ends with 47D. You see it also shows when it expires. However, the signature is invalid. So unlike it's not totally scribbling everything, okay? This part here is the payload. This part here is the payload. This part here is the payload. This part here is the algorithm. Okay, this part here is the algorithm. And here, this part here is the signature. So here the algorithm, the payload, and the signature. So oftentimes, always, the payload is always available in your JWT token. So the payload is always available. Your JWT token. This is when it was issued and this is when it's expiring. And this time is slightly not correct. Okay, they're using a different timing, showing 17. And here, it's the access token we picked here. So yeah, it's correct. The access token we picked, so it's correct. Then here, this is what so when you put in your secret, that is when it's going to use the secret in encrypting this to verify that secret. So basically, it's just a signature. It's just like signing. This is not. This is decoded. It's on the algorithm. So the algorithm is what you use in coding it. So a secret now is used in signing to verify that this secret is correct. So it will always be invalid until you put in the particular secret that was here. Okay, so until you put in the particular secret that was here, and honestly, I don't know why this guy is saying signature verified. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why it's saying signature verified, or that's that. So I don't know what's going on here, but it's obviously not verified on my own end when I'm going to pick it up. So I don't know, probably the JLP IO has an issue that we need to look into. All right, so let's go further. This is where we were. We've been able to send the information here, and what we want to do here is we want to check the authorized method now. So the authorized method, we want to modify the authorized method to be able to deal with the fact that now we are no longer receiving we're no longer using the cookies. We're using the access token that's going to be sent to us on the front end. Okay, so that access token, we want to use it and as the means of authorization. So after the user has come in, we then want to use it as the means of authorization. So there's going to be a slight twist to how we're going to use this. So what the front end is going to do is the front end is going to send the token as header. Okay, so it's going to send the token as a header. So what we want to do is we want to pick the header. So we pick the header from how the front end sends the request. Okay, so we want to pick the header. So let's do this. So let's say rest of header. Okay. This guy should give me some completion. Okay, so save me stress. So I want to call this off header. So just call this off header. Call it what you want. Call it header. I want to call it auth header. So so this header, this is how the front end will define it. So you can define it like this, or you can choose the front end can decide to call it a different name, whatever name it is. That name is going to be between you and front end, or by default, you just want to call this authorization if you're a front end developer. So here, I'm going to pick this header. Now, if there is no auth header that bears this name, okay, then deny access to it. Okay, so let's say auth header. If the auth header doesn't exist, then you want to deny access to it. So you can then do a status 403 or 41. Okay, 403 is forbidden, 41 is unauthorized. So let's just use 41. Okay, let's just 41. Let's just 41 here. So right then here, after you've picked the information, okay, you pick the header. What you want to do now is the way the header is usually stored in the front end. Okay, right now we're not storing it as a header; it's stored as a cookie. But if the front end was to store it as a header, they would usually store it as something like, let me just do this for instance, authorization, or let's say authorization. Okay, so you can say authorization, and when they store it, they will store it with bearer space and the space and the token. So there will be a space in the way they store it, the authorization and access to the the authorization, bearer, and space and the token. So this is how the front end will store it. Okay, so this is how the front end will store this. Okay, so you have bearer, then the space, then the token. So when we pick this token from the front end, what you want to do is you want to then split it. You want to separate it. So we're going to pick the token to say from the auth head. Okay. Okay. You know what? Let me stop here and let me receive this header so that you see what I'm talking about. So let me conceal it. Let me conceal this and you see what I'm talking about. So our auth header. So you see what I'm talking about. So authorized. So now let's comment this out. All right, let's comment this out. So let's see what routes do we have authorized currently being functional. So items to what now? This is supposed to get. Okay, so let's use it to get all items. So authorized get all items / okay, just there / So I'm going to copy this. I don't need to copy this. Let me just change this here. So just change this here. Items and get all the items. So that's great. Sorry. Okay, so I can get all items and okay, so let me just close this up. Okay. So here I'm sending in this information here, and when I send this information, you see that it's going to give me the bearer token. So I did this twice, that's why it's appearing twice. Okay, so it's going to show me the bearer token. So let me just stage that and clear up that. That's going temporarily. So this is what I'm talking about. So send this again. So it's going to set me the bearer token. So this bearer token now is coming from here. I consider logic here. So you have bearer space. So what I want to do is I want to split. Okay, so I want to split this. So I want to split this. So I want to split this, and I want to split it where there is a space. Okay, so I want to split it where there is a space. After splitting it where there is a space, it becomes an array of 2 objects because you have bearer and then you have the token at the side. So it becomes an array of 2 objects. So I want to pick the second one. Okay, so I want to pick the second one. So 0 would be the bearer, the name bearer, and then 1 would now be the second one. So let me consider log this again. So you see that effect. So consider log, and you see that here. Okay, so let's go over it again. So, okay. All right. So going over this here, you see here now, I have just the token now, just the token without bearer. All right, so just the token without bearer, and that works. All right, so after picking this token, I want to verify the token. So I'm going to go back to the verify token process, and I can just do this. So I can just do this verify token and request to users. If you go online, you will see like different ways in which things are done, like maybe error decode and everything. So you might see this as the way which this is done. But in this case, we want to store this user information. Okay, so we want to store this information that's coming from the token, and let's just try this from now. Okay, let's try this from now, and it should then let me know if the token is still valid or not. Okay, so as you can see, it says access denied because the token is no longer valid. Okay, so access denied, token is no longer valid. So that's a 4-1 unauthorized. So let's log in again, get a new, or let's log in again and get a new access token and add this access token here. Okay, so I want to pick this new access token. Here I want to add it to header, and here down, racing against 30 seconds. All right, so let me send this request. Let me check if there's something. Okay, let me check if there's something. Okay. Let me just check. So here, it says what's it saying here. Secret or public key was provided. Okay, sorry, I'm using the wrong public key. So this is access to the secret access to the secret. What I did work. What I do work. So I want to set this temporarily to. I want to set this temporarily to like. Let me set it temporarily to like 3 minutes. So I don't have to go through the stress of doing this over and over again. So let me set this to 3 minutes until all set and done. Okay. All right. So here. All right. So yeah, so I can see the information that is here. So this information that is here, let me go back to 32 or 30 seconds so that we can see it expire. I'm going to go back to 30 seconds to see it expire. So we'll see what we're talking about. So this is being, see, this is saved, right? So let me see if the token has expired. You can see, even though I've changed the setup, the token is still valid. Okay, but let me just log in so I have a new access token totally. Okay, so yes, a new token completely. And here, put this and quickly go. So this is available. It's still available. Want to wait for some time to see that it expires. Available. All right. So it's no longer available. So it's expired now. So it no longer is verified. Okay, so it's no longer available. So that's this. That's it. So you will see some other methods like decoded and stuff and everything, but you can see. So if you look at this now, you see that it's expired. So yes, the token has expired, and we're considered logging the error. So it says token expired error, GWT expired. So that's basically what just happened. Token expired, and that's the case. Okay, so token expired, and that's the case. So in this case here, it's throwing an error here. So I don't want to throw an error. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain an option. Okay, so right now there's no error, but it's throwing an error, but this is expected. So I'm going to chain an error to this, and this comes in. This comes in with the JWT verify method. Okay, so JWT verify method. So I'm just going through this. So if there's an error, what I want it to do is, instead of it throwing this error as we have here with console.log, which is basically working, we don't really need this. Okay, since we're using a try catch, we don't need this. Okay, let me just take this out. We're using a try catch, so we don't need this. If I wasn't using a try catch block, that's when we need this. Okay, so for now we don't need this. Okay, if I was using a try catch block, if I wasn't using a try catch block, that's when you need that. So I only had the console.log there. That's why it was showing that. But if we don't have a try catch block like this, then that's when we need that. So yeah, we don't need it. So let me just do this again. Denied, and it shouldn't show anything here. So this is just because I'm posting and uploading the token. Okay, so okay. All right, so all right, so it shouldn't even show anything. It just show this, all right. So as you can see, it's showing nothing. So why it was throwing that error was because I had why I had considered an error here, and I'm using a try catch block. Since I'm using a try catch block, we don't need the other methods. That's okay. All right. Okay. So we've done that. We've been able to verify. We've been able to continue with that. And if we go further, we still have our cookie. Okay, we still have our JWT cookie here, which is HTTP only. So how do we use the cookie? Will be the final aspect of today. How do we use the cookie? So to use the cookie, we when this token expires, come on, you don't expect your user to have to sign in again. Is the user going to be signing again every 15 minutes? No. Okay, so then that's when the refresh token comes in. So we'll go over how we use the refresh token. Okay, so we'll go over how we use the refresh token. So let me put this down and put this up. Okay, so what you want to do in terms of your refresh token is you want to create like a refresh route that the front end can send the information to. If the front end wants to pick information, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in the controller. So I don't need this authorized again. So I'm going to do this in the controller. Okay, so in the controller, this log in. Let me just duplicate this. Using Shift, Alt, and down to duplicate that. And I'm going to use Hold Alt to move it downwards to the end of the page, which I've done. Then I'm going to call this refresh token. So I'm going to call this refresh. Let me just call this token refresh. So it has a different name from refresh token itself. So what I want to do here is, here I'm not doing validations. Okay, so I'm not going to do validations. I'm not doing this. So what I want to do is I want to receive the cookies. So I'm going to take cookies that come in with the request. Like I mentioned to you, the cookie is sent by default in every request. That's the advantage of the beauty of using cookies. Okay, so the cookie is set with every request. So I think I still need the authorized. Let me just pick this. I'm going to pick this from here. Okay, so yeah. So let me just pick this and still going to use this. So let me just put that there. All right. So if there are no cookies, okay. If there are no cookies, all right. If there are no cookies, then return an error. Now, if there is a cookie, conditionally, if there's a cookie, so I'm going to change this. If there's a cookie, then I want you to find out if there is a cookie named JWT. So that I'm using this chaining method, this optional chaining method, to check if there are cookies first. If there are no cookies, return this. And if there are cookies, check if there is a cookie call JWT, which is what we call our cookies, right? This is what we call our cookie. We call it JWT. Yes. So if there is such a cookie, then return this. If there is not such a cookie, then return this. Now, if there is a cookie, then I want you to check for, we don't need this, okay? So let's check, okay, so let's check if user account exists, okay? If user account exists in database, so you want to look for a user account that has the cookie, okay? So for us to get the cookie, we need to then get the cookie out. So let's get the cookie out. So let's say const refresh token, const refresh token is equal to cookies.jwt. Okay, so this is if there are cookies. Okay. Okay, I don't need all of this at the end. Sorry about that. Let me just wipe all of this at the end. Let me leave this last part. I don't need this. I don't need this. So basically, we're referring to the same thing. Okay, so I don't need this. I don't need this. Then I'm going to comment all of this out. I don't need this either. Okay. So I'm going to comment this out until we get to that point. Okay, so we get to this point. I'm going to comment this out. So we just work with only what we need. Okay, so const refresh token is equal to this JWT secret, and or rather the JWT rather that comes from here. And I want to check for a user that has the refresh token. Okay, so a user that has this refresh token. That's what I want to do. So I don't need the password here. And I'm not turning the refresh token on. Can remain false if we still check the database for it. Okay. The only time we need it to return it is if we want to get that information. So for now, we have if not user. If there's no user, return 401 invalid credentials or let's just say access denied signed in. So same thing. So it's same thing. So just say access denied signed in. All right. So all right. All right. So that's that. Let's bring this one up. That's all right. The same message, but different. Okay. So all right. So if the user exists, now we've checked the database to see if the user exists. Now, if the user exists, you want to evaluate the refresh token. So all of this is if the user does not exist, don't waste our time. Okay. So that's the purpose of that. If the user does not exist, don't waste our time. But if the user exists, then let's evaluate the refresh token. So let's try to evaluate the refresh token before we talk about issuing a new access token. So let's evaluate our refresh token. Okay, so what we want to do now is just JWT.verify. Okay, so verify, and then we'll pick the refresh token. We'll compare it. We'll check it using our stored variable, which is refresh token secret. And then after doing that, we will then use the error. Okay, so we're going to use the error method here because in this case here, we want it to give us if there's an error or if there's not error. So if there's an error, we don't want it to go. Or if there's no error, then it should go. So that's the purpose of this here. I'm still doing this in try catch, but I don't need to do that. But I want to do some evaluations here. So here, if there is an error, Or, sorry, let me just put this up. Okay, so if there's an error, or let's say, for example, the user now .id that is being provided, okay, the user that we've gotten out from database._id is not equal to the user that is provided, okay? It's not equal to the user that is, after we've decoded this, right? Okay, after we've decoded this, if it's not equal to the user, the decoded.id now, then you want to return. Okay, so you want to return. So that's the purpose of this. So you want to return and say, you can say something like rest dot, let's say rest of status. Okay, rest of status. Okay, so you can say status 403 for meeting, and you can then change in a JSON message saying, or maybe success is force. The message is completed. Okay, so message is forbidden. Let's just use this. So we see a different error message. Right now, this here we are still in here. So I can do this here. Okay, so let me just pick this up here. So I can just do this here. So I want to issue. So I want to issue access token if the if the user, if there's no error, and if the user.id matches, okay, then I want to issue refresh token. So I could then comment this, just comment this, and check if there's any modifications I need to do. Okay, so here, 30 seconds, just for us to test it out, and then the time must be the same. Okay, the time that you are giving for both of them should be the same, and we send the access token, and that's all. So this route, so this here now is like a new endpoint, which is called token refresh. I'm exported it here, and if there's any issue here, so probably after this, I'll just refactor this so that I don't have to do this error to put it. But after you refactor it yourself, okay, cool. It works. So let's add this to our user routes. So we have sign up, login, log out. So let me import token refresh. Token app stuff instead of common. So let me import token refresh. All right. And, let me just take this here. So let me say refresh. Let me just call this refresh and token refresh. All right. So this would be the endpoint for me to get a refresh token. So what do I need to provide? I need to provide the cookies. So the cookies are already stored, as we saw. The cookies are already available here, so I don't need to provide it now because I've already logged in. So I'm just going to go over to this, and I hope that's it. I hope that's the get request. Okay, so it's a get request. I'm not sending anything in the body, it's a get request. So I'm not sending anything in the body since I'm using cookies. So to get request /refresh. Okay, /refresh. All right, and yeah, I think that's all. All right. So what's it saying? Access denied. User refresh, access denied. So let me turn in some validations to see what's going on. Yes, let me check it to see what's going on. So first off, let me turn on some comments. So let me start with saying, fresh token. Okay, fresh token. All right, so let me see that I have the right fresh token here. So, okay, page is still loading. Okay, so let me see. I don't have any refresh token coming in. Why? Okay. Okay, so that's what's happening. So I don't have the refresh token coming in. Just give me a second. Just give me a second. The power went out and why that's being resolved. Okay, so I want to check that you can still share my. I can still see my screen. Okay, great. All right, great. All right, great. Okay. All right. So let me check what is happening. Why cookies aren't available here. Okay, so I have this here. I have JWT. Yes. It's coming in here. Yes, it's coming in quite all right. Okay, so okay. Okay. I get it. Come in, please. Just give me a second. I get it. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, so let me at this point here, let me do this from here. Let me do this from here. Let me consider the log cookies. See what is going on here. Cookies. Okay, so let me consider log just cookies. See what's going on here. Okay. Token refresh. Did I not store the key before? Let me log in again. See what's going on. Just give me a second. See what's going on. Log in. Yes. Okay, then cookies now. Okay, I have this cookie. Let me clear the cookie first of all. Okay, first of all. Okay. All right, so let me log in again. All right, so let me check. Yes, I have cookies. Cookies are here. Okay, all right. Okay, then this is refresh token refresh, and I want to console the log cookies at this point. Okay, I want to console log cookies at this point. So where am I here? So log in. All right. Oh, it's giving me a no. Okay, all right. It's giving me a no, so it means that it's not calling on this properly. It's not calling on this properly. Okay, so that's why it's telling me a no. It's not calling on this properly. So I'll check what's up. Let me just give me a second. Let me check what's up and see why it's not returning. Let me see why it's not returning the key. Okay. Pretty much the same. Or cookies. Pretty much the same cookies. Pretty much the same. Just let me see what's coming on. Let me see what's coming on. Let me check if I have cookie parser. That could be the thing. It's possible I don't have cookie parser installed. I have cookie parser. I have cookie parser. Yes. I have cookie parser. So what exactly is going on? But we used cookies in the last class. So why didn't I return cookies? I have cookie parser. I have to use cookie parser. I have this route cookie parser. Cookie parser. Why? Okay. Parser is here. Okay. Okay. So okay, yeah. Someone mentioned about like the secure option being there, and yes, secure option could be worn. Okay, the secure option could be worn, or it works normally with even with secure option on. So I'll try to turn it off. I'll try to turn it off. Okay, normally it works with secure options being on, but let me try to turn off some other things. Okay, so I'm going to try to turn off some other things off of that. So what do I turn off? What do I turn off? Okay, what do I turn off? Okay, what I'll just do for now is I'm going to turn off because this is coming from the same site. Okay, and I set the same site to none. It becomes difficult to check. Well, let me turn off those other two parameters so we can get past this. Then later on, I'll probably do an update of what changed or what we need to change. But generally, let me turn this off. Same site, max age 30. Let me turn this off now. Let me turn this off for now. What route is this? This is the login. So this is our login. So I want to turn this off. Basically only max age all that. Okay. Then I want to clear the key, just clear it. Okay. So just clear the key. Start again. Login. All right. Okay, so let me try to refresh. All right, so it's gone past that. So we have a forbidden, so that's gone past that now. Okay, so we have a forbidden, that's gone past that. So just give me a second. Okay, so I hope you can still see my screen. I hope you can still see my screens. Okay, if you can just give me like a thumbs up or something so I can see the screen still up. Just stop power so I can continue my other screen. All right, so here, after turning this off, I'm seeing, okay, I'm getting like cookie now. Okay, so turning this off, I'm getting a cookie. And with this here, let me just do a little bit of testing to see what exactly was wrong. Exactly what was wrong before we issue it. We're already at the end of this class. I'm done in a few minutes. Okay, so let's see. Success false, giving the token, then secure true. Okay, so let's have secure true on it. So let's see. So if this is the case, then we'll find out what exactly honestly, I don't know what's happening, but even with secure true, it's still showing up. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I will just take it as an issue from Postman because basically still the same thing we've done. So for now, I'm going to leave this off for now, so I don't have issues. I don't have issues that will delay our class. So I'm going to leave this off as you've seen. It's still functioning with both of them on both secure and safe sites as expected. But I want to leave this off so that we can get headway without issues. So here we have our So here we have this endpoint to refresh the tokens. Let me close this sign up. Oh, sorry, sign up login. So log out to. So here, after we have tested, okay, so we're going to check if there is such a user that has the refresh token. If there's such a user that has the refresh token. So why are we getting forbidden? Why are we getting forbidden when we can see this? Why are we getting forbidden? So let me see. Okay, access denied is what we are getting. Okay, so we're getting access denied rather. We're getting access denied. And let me consider the log the user.id. Okay, so let me consider the log user.id, user._id. Okay, to see what exactly is going on. So let me just call this ID. And let me call this coded.id. Coded.id. Okay, to see what exactly is going on. Coded. Okay, so why is it giving us a forbidden instead? All right. Okay, then where else? What else was I considering? Okay, all right. Okay, so giving us false and forbidden. So we have this as the new ID. Oh, okay. So basically, this symbol here, when you have equals to not equals to twice, it means that it's going to compare not only the value but the type. So here, the type we have here is the type of object ID, a new object ID. Why the value we have here is a string. Both of them are string, but it's of a different type. So I'm going to remove one. So it's just going to compare if the two of them are the same. If this string here is the same with this string and not just the type. So this one is of a type of object ID, while this one is a type of string. So the types are different. So here, what you have here is just not equals to. If I put not equals to twice, like not equals, then you have that 3/ with this. Okay, so that's basically what's happening. Okay, so let's do this again and see. All right, so you can see we have logged in successfully and we have the new access. So here, I don't need this logged in successfully. I don't need this logged in successfully because the user is already logged in, so we don't need that. All we just need
So
is
please, I think your screen is frozen. Your screen is frozen. We can't see what you're doing now.
Okay. Let me stop and start again. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen now? Can you see my screen now, please? That's somebody. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what I was saying here, the issue we're having before is we had not equals to. This is not equals to, and it was throwing an error when I tried signing in here using the refresh token. It was showing an error of forbidden, and this error of forbidden was showing me that this is not equals to this. One, there was an error. If there's no error, then is this equals to this? So in this case here, what I did was I was considered logging the two of them to see what came in because I knew there was no error. So what exactly was coming in here that was showing the error. So on doing that, I checked here, and what I saw was that the information I was getting. Okay. What I saw here was that the information I was getting was sorry, let me just put the equals to the third one. Okay, so this is what we had before, and we're having an error there, and it was showing forbidden. So why it was showing forbidden was because the object, this information that's coming as the user.id is of a type of object ID, not a string, of a type of object ID, which is the MongoDB type. Then here, the coded is of a type of string. So these are actually the same value, but they are of different types. So I had to remove this other one to make them be to only compare the values and not the types. Okay, so that's what I did, and then doing that, it works. So in this case, you want to be sure that you are using just one, not an equals to. Or if you want to do that, you can then do maybe JSON.stringify to convert this one to a string, and then you can then compare with the equality sign, whichever one works for you. Okay, so with this, we log in. So I don't want to put this login successfully here again. All I just want to give in the access token. So I could decide to give in maybe just the access token only. I could still put in true, but let's just put only the access token so that it's easy for the front end to just pick that only that. So with that, we've been able to complete the entire process. So here we have the access token, we'll be able to complete the entire process, and I can use this access token on the front end to get the whatever information I want. So I'm going back here to Vera, and let's try, before I put this here, you will see that it's denied. For putting in this new token now, if it hasn't expired, I can get the information. So this information is here, and I think we have a time span of about 30 seconds. So by now it's expired again. So if I want to get a new token again, I refresh, get the token, and the token there, the front end will add the token to the bearer. Okay, so add the token to the bearer, and after that, you have access, and then after some time, when the token expires, you still have access, still have access. After some point, the token will expire, and when the token will expire, the front end will need to ask for the refresh token, so it's expired again. So by default, you don't want to leave that 30 seconds, it should be on 15 minutes by default, so 15 minutes is okay. 15 minutes is okay, so I'm going to update this to 15 minutes so that you don't leave it at 30 seconds because it's a very unbearable process. Okay, so access token should be at least 15 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes. Then where again did I do that? I think I did that in the login. So I did that in the login. All right, so that's that. So I'll take questions. Any question, anybody? Any question? If there are questions, raise your hands, please, so I can call you. Questions, please, anybody? Any questions, please? Any questions? If there are questions, let me know. Are we good to go? I hope this was pretty much explanatory. Can anybody hear me, or is it my audio is frozen?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so I think it's that well.
Yeah,
okay.
It seems
thanks. Okay, so I think it was self-explanatory and good to go now. So all right. So in the absence of questions, I'd like to hand over to our mentor, so that you can round up.
Yeah, all right, guys. Seems today's class was very straightforward and easy to decode, right? So that's why we didn't have questions to ask. All right, yeah. So again, thanks, Ben, for another wonderful class, another wonderful session. Guys, also thanks for joining in. Yeah, so we'll see you guys on Friday. All right, so have a nice rest of the day and keep practicing. All right, bye, guys.